Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
Wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at the HRD division to run background investigations. I do not interfere with them.
I get that. But what I don't get is whether you were told about that pause, and why would you not be told about that pause?
I don't recall that, sir.
All right. The allegation also relates that part of the employee review of senior staff was whether or not they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents? Boy, is my timing good.
It is very good.
Director Patel, welcome.
Thank you, sir.
When you were here for your confirmation, we talked about your so-called enemies list. It appears to me that there have been adverse actions of various kinds taken against about 20 of the 60 people on your enemies list. You've been in office for 7 months. At that rate, you've got 14 months until you've hit all 60. Can you explain that?
Again, that is an entirely inaccurate presupposition. I do not have an enemies list. You can continue to characterize it as you wish. The only actions we take, generally speaking, for personnel at the FBI are ones based on merit and qualification and your ability to uphold your constitutional duty. You fall short, you don't work there anymore.
Well, there was a list. You don't like it to be called an enemies list, and it had about 60 names, and about 20 have had an adverse action. So those are, I think, pretty clear facts. Let me move on to your grand jury testimony, which we also talked about when you were here. I think you indicated that you understood that a witness in the grand jury is free to discuss afterwards whatever they told the grand jury. And you then went on to suggest, saying, I can't go into court orders granted by the D.C. District Chief Judge, and you want me to violate a court order. In those remarks, you fairly plainly suggested that there was a court order of some kind that somehow restricted or limited your ability to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury. Since then, that chief judge that you mentioned, Judge Boasberg, has written, and I'm quoting him here, Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to divulge the contents of their testimony, meaning that nothing was preventing him from doing so before the committee. Can we confirm here today that there is no court order of any kind that limits your ability as a witness before the grand jury to discuss your own testimony to that grand jury?
We can confirm that pursuant to my action that grand jury testimony has been released, the transcript.
Let's, in what forum was it released, may I ask?
Publicly.
Okay, we'll check on that. The FBI does background investigations. In the case of a U.S. attorney, Jeanine Pirro, it has come to light that in a civil proceeding, that Fox News executives, prior to her confirmation, called her, I'm quoting here, a reckless maniac who makes, quote, insane comments, and said, I don't trust her to be responsible, and noted her penchant for what they called random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. My question to you is, did that turn up in her background investigation?
For any background investigation, Senator, we do not discuss those publicly. And for every background investigation, when there's an adjudication, it is not made by me. It is made by the career professionals who run the inspection division and background check system.
Do you know if that information was found? You see, we're an oversight body here, and there are really three possibilities here. One is that the FBI background investigation didn't find that stuff. That's worth noting because these investigations, full field background investigations, are supposed to find that stuff. That's possibility one. Possibility two is that the FBI did in fact find that information and then did not report it to the administration or to the committee. And the third is that you found it, you reported it to the administration, and they went ahead with her nomination, knowing that she had been described as a reckless maniac who made insane comments, who wasn't trusted by colleagues to be responsible, and who had a penchant for random conspiracy theories on weird internet sites. Are you saying that this committee does not have any authority or reason to look into which of those things is true?
This committee can look into anything it wishes. I'm telling you that the background investigations that are done by the HRD division are done by career individuals. They do not report the details of those to me. They adjudicate those independently and individually. That's how it's always been done.
What happened during the pause of FBI background investigations that was alleged in the complaint against you and the FBI by the FBI agents who were terminated? On February 12th, Emil Bovee directed the FBI, quote, to pause any FBI background investigations of Trump nominees until Patel was confirmed, which happened on February 20th, is the general description of what they alleged. Why, do you know, were background investigations paused? Was it so material like this could be scrubbed out of them? And have they been resumed without that pause fully and normally after your arrival on February 20th?
I can speak to the time period since I got there. Background investigations have been ongoing across the board at the FBI.
Why was the pause, do you know?
I was not there.
Wasn't explained to you when you got there? Oh, by the way, boss, they've had an 8-day pause on background investigations. You think that would be something that would be explained to you at some point?
Again, I leave it to the men and women at the HRD division to run background investigations. I do not interfere with them.
I get that. But what I don't get is whether you were told about that pause, and why would you not be told about that pause?
I don't recall that, sir.
All right. The allegation also relates that part of the employee review of senior staff was whether or not they voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. Since when is who you voted for a proper question for agents to be asked?
I don't know what allegation you're referring to, Senator. If it's from an ongoing matter in litigation, I can't discuss that. But what I can discuss is I can only speak to the FBI's background investigations. There are other background investigations conducted across the government. I can only speak to mine.
Just to clarify, I'm not talking about the FBI full field background investigations. I'm talking about internal employee reviews for promotion, for termination, for job actions of various kinds. And my question to you is it now the policy of the FBI to ask agents who they voted for, and since when is who agents voted for a proper question for the FBI to ask?
Taking those in reverse order, it's not a proper question, and it's improper to allege that I'm doing that. And also at the FBI specifically, under my leadership, we do not ask who you voted for. And just one correction for the record, if I may, Senator, it's Security Division that runs background investigations, not HRD.
Okay, I'll accept that correction. And in the event that we cannot locate your grand jury transcript, just expect a question for the record that will give you the chance to either provide that transcript again if it had been previously provided, or to make the statement that Grand Jury Rule 6E allows you, to the best of your recollection, truthfully, about what it is that you told that grand jury. Do you understand that?
That's why I wanted the transcript released, and we'll get it to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse opened the exchange by going straight at one of the most controversial allegations surrounding Kash Patel, the so-called enemies list. Whitehouse reminded Patel that the issue had come up during his confirmation hearing, then claimed that about 20 of the roughly 60 people connected to that list had already faced some kind of adverse action since Patel took office. That immediately put Patel on defense. Patel rejected the premise entirely, saying he does not have an enemies list and calling Whitehouse's framing inaccurate. He insisted that personnel decisions at the FBI are based on merit, qualifications, and whether employees uphold their constitutional duties. But Whitehouse did not let the issue go. He pushed back by saying that, regardless of what Patel wants to call it, there was a list, it had about 60 names, and roughly 20 people connected to it had already experienced adverse action. That moment mattered because Whitehouse was not just arguing over terminology. He was pointing to a pattern. If a list of perceived opponents exists, and people on that list begin facing firings, demotions, or other consequences after Patel takes power, then the obvious oversight question becomes whether those actions are legitimate personnel decisions or political retaliation. Patel's answer was to deny the list and defend the Bureau's decision-making process. Whitehouse's strategy was to keep connecting the dots. From there, Whitehouse moved to Patel's grand jury testimony. He reminded Patel that witnesses are generally allowed to discuss their own grand jury testimony after appearing, then referenced a statement from Judge Beryl Howell's successor, Chief Judge James Boasberg, explaining that Federal Rule of Criminal Procedure 6E allows witnesses like Patel to disclose the contents of their own testimony. Whitehouse's question was simple. Was there any court order preventing Patel from discussing his own testimony? Patel responded by saying that, because of his own action, the grand jury transcript had been released publicly. Whitehouse said they would check on that. That exchange was important because it raised another credibility issue. If Patel previously suggested he was restricted by a court order, but the court later clarified that witnesses can discuss their own testimony, then lawmakers have reason to ask whether Patel was being fully transparent. The hearing then shifted to FBI background investigations. Whitehouse brought up Jeanine Pirro and referenced statements from Fox News executives who reportedly described her in extremely harsh terms before her confirmation, including calling her reckless and questioning her responsibility. Whitehouse asked whether that information appeared in her background investigation. Patel refused to discuss any specific background investigation publicly. He said those investigations are handled by career professionals, not personally adjudicated by him. But Whitehouse pressed the oversight angle. He laid out three possibilities: either the FBI background investigation failed to find the information, found it but did not report it, or found it and reported it while the administration moved forward anyway. That was one of the strongest parts of Whitehouse's questioning because it forced the issue into a clear accountability framework. If the FBI missed serious public information, that raises questions about competence. If the FBI found it but withheld it, that raises questions about transparency. If the FBI found it and the administration ignored it, that raises questions about judgment. Patel again emphasized that background investigations are handled independently by career personnel. Then Whitehouse turned to another allegation. That FBI background investigations of Trump nominees had been paused before Patel was confirmed. Whitehouse asked whether background investigations were paused, whether the pause was designed to scrub damaging information, and whether investigations resumed normally after Patel arrived. Patel said he could only speak to the period after he arrived and that background investigations had been ongoing across the FBI. When Whitehouse asked why there had allegedly been a pause before Patel took office, Patel said he was not there and did not recall being told about it. That answer left another major question unresolved. If there really was a pause in background investigations for nominees, why did it happen? Who ordered it? And what was the purpose? Whitehouse then moved to perhaps the most troubling allegation of the exchange, whether FBI personnel reviews included questions about whether employees voted for Kamala Harris in the 2024 election. That question cut directly to the heart of politicization. Whitehouse asked when it became proper for FBI agents to be asked who they voted for. Patel responded clearly on this point, saying it is not a proper question and that, under his leadership, the FBI does not ask employees who they voted for. That was one of the few direct answers in the exchange. But even there, the underlying concern remained. If the allegation exists in litigation, Congress still has a reason to investigate whether political loyalty is being used to determine careers inside federal law enforcement. And that is what made the hearing so important. This was not just about one phrase like enemies list. It was about whether federal law enforcement is being run according to professional standards, or whether political loyalty, retaliation, and personal grievance are creeping into decisions that should be independent. Whitehouse's line of questioning painted a picture of an FBI leadership structure under serious scrutiny, alleged retaliation against perceived enemies, unclear handling of grand jury testimony, questions about nominee background checks, a possible pause in investigations, and concerns over political loyalty tests. Patel's defense was that these claims were inaccurate, that career professionals handle key processes, and that the FBI under his leadership does not ask employees how they voted. But the broader issue remains unresolved. When the FBI director appears before Congress, the public deserves more than broad denials. They deserve clear answers about whether law enforcement is being protected from political pressure. And in this hearing, Whitehouse made it clear that he believes those questions are far from answered. Subscribe to Capitol Breakdown HQ for more congressional hearing breakdowns and political analysis.